Hello, my name is John Cashew Rice. I have the pleasure to be your host for this post. I'll start that again. Hello, my name is John Cashew Rice. I have the pleasure to be the host for this podcast. This week we have Leatham Green with us. Hi, Leatham.
Good morning to you. Great to see you.
Thank you for joining us. You've got a wealth of information from a variety of backgrounds, and you're involved in apprenticeships. So how did you get involved with the apprenticeships, and what are you doing?
Well, my passion for talent development is really what got me kind of drawn into that world. I'm a member of an organization called the Public Sector People Management Association, which is kind of a public service equivalent to CIPD. And I have been a member of their board for around 15 years or so, and I lead on the area of talent development. So one of the programs that I created for them was the Apprentice of the Year, trying to tap into and kind of showcase the world that public service has got a breadth and depth of talent, and it's just an opportunity to be able to showcase how great people are who work there. And often you don't hear those kind of great messages and stories. Yeah. So that's what it's about.
I agree with you there. There's a lot of great people involved and work behind the scenes that don't often get recognized.
Yeah, and often, how do you attract great talent into that space? And you've got to be able to have some great role models and fantastic stories, and this gives us an opportunity really to be able to do that and work, with a range of private and public sector organizations to be able to do it. And people are always really surprised, really, at the end of it, and how much of a life-changing experience it can be for our coaches and judges as well as for the participants. Yeah.
Excellent. So how long have you been involved within the personal and business development arena, including NLP, coaching, mindfulness?
Well, I'm a lifelong or an adult-long meditator, and so therefore mindful practitioner. I started my world of meditating and mindfulness in 1980. So, it's well before it was kind of fashionable as it currently is. So you might get some purists who might turn their nose up at why has it suddenly become trendy? But, it's been around for thousands of years as a practice. So it's not just a new thing that somebody's discovered and suddenly promoting as an answer to many of the woes of current business. So that was my kind of arrival to to mindfulness, and NLP kind of world came a little bit later in kind of the early 90s, and I was just looking for different opportunities and ways of being able to engage and communicate, and how can leaders become more confident, and how can I be more confident in what I was doing and delivering. And I was fortunate enough to do some training with Paul McKenna and McKenna Green, and did a number of their workshops around NLP, which I found really quite liberating and certainly life-changing, career-changing for me, in terms of being able to tap into those techniques. So those two things, around the better part of 25 years, and I've kind of used them and honed them into my own particular style of coaching and delivering. And as an independent operator, I'm relatively new. This is kind of coming into my second year of operating. I launched the Mindful HR Center in March of last year. So it's been a long time in the brewing, or kind of the melting pot, and devising and thinking about what I can do. And I've just decided I want to spend a proportion of my time promoting what I passionately believe in. Whether that generates business for me is a different matter, but I can believe in it, and I hope that other people will kind of want to find out more about it.
Well, before we jump into how you've been using NLP, what would be wonderful is how has the meditation, the mindfulness affected you and your business life?
Well, when I first entered the world of business, I soon realized that I needed to be able to speak confidently as a leader in front of people, and that was something that I'd really struggled with. I'd had quite a challenge at school for a variety of reasons, and I'm a gay man working in the Northeast, and growing up there, and it was quite difficult in the 70s, and therefore had a lot of bullying, and it kind of affected my personal confidence. So I needed to be able to do something about it, and I was very self-conscious. And my first job, which was a banqueting manager working in the Park Hotel in Tynemouth, my induction was a program of meditation. The two managers there were really quite liberating. I didn't realize that at the time. I just thought it was a bit odd. So on my first day, they did a part of your induction. If you want to, you don't have to do it, but we meditate here twice a day. So we're going to pay for you to go on a meditation course, as they did with every person who joined the hotel. It was really quite an amazing place.
That's excellent.
So that's how I got into it, and it really helps. Kind of, it's a gradual thing. It's not something that I can just you meditate once and your life changes. It's a practice that you need to do like anything else. The more you do it, the more benefit you will gain from it. And if you can build it into your routine, you certainly start to see those benefits arising. And for me, it just enabled me to control my nerves and control my anxiety, and helps when you kind of use the basic techniques and those times when you're under pressure. So that's the other bit. One of the great skills of a business leader is being able to think competently under pressure, and often that disappears because you forget to breathe, and therefore the energy going to your brain doesn't work quite as much, and people speak before they think. So very simple at a basic level, mindfulness can start to encourage you or enable you or give you the opportunity to be just a little bit more thoughtful about what you're saying before you've said it. So that's kind of how I came across it. And I've never kind of labeled it in the business. My career has been in local government in the main. And when I first started to float the idea of doing meditation sessions at lunchtime for colleagues, I remember this was kind of in the mid-90s. And it was really very much frowned upon, as if I was bringing spirituality into the workplace, and all
outrageous.
Very mystical. Yes. And yet it's quite okay to do prayers before we have council meetings, but it's not okay to have meditation to control bring better well-being and wellness for your employees. Anyway, life has changed and moved on quite a bit. Changed the label from meditating to mindfulness. Think about a distress reduction, and you start to bring about some changes in the way people think. And also, you've got some celebrities who promote it and bring it into business, and therefore the traction starts to change a little bit. So however it's worked, I'm just really pleased that it's now there for people to be able to access.
Yes, and I think there's a lot of successful people who maybe not sort of mention that they meditate, but it's probably a part of their lives.
Yeah, I mean, it can be it is a very, very private thing. We're all uniquely different in our own special way, and the power of mindfulness will start to affect you in a very individual way. The generic benefits are pretty clear, but how I'm feeling, how I'm thinking at this point in time, my thoughts and feelings are going to be very different from your thoughts and feelings, and compared to your the listeners of this conversation. So something like this, where you can tap into it, you might not want to share it, but I've just decided that it's been such a liberating thing for me, and the biggest tool that's enabled me to be more effective, successful than I would have been had I not had the fortunate opportunity to discover it at a very early part of my career.
Excellent. So what did the NLP bring to the table that meditation underpinned, if you liked?
And the biggest thing that NLP brought for me, linked to meditation, because you'll find that a lot of the techniques, or my interpretation of many of the techniques in NLP, is that they're based very much on your ability to first of all get yourself in a state where you're open and receptive. So you would often start that by having a breath, taking deep breaths, relaxing your breath, breathing freely, whatever language that might be in terms of the setup. So I just kind of thought, well, that's quite intriguing that they're using these kind of very ancient techniques, not new stuff, but what is new and who's discovered it. It's always somebody else's twist on something. So that was a very strong kind of bond for me, because I got that, and I knew that it was really important to be able to be open and receptive, and that comes through the breath and keeping your kind of mental state alert and open.
Yeah.
And then the enhancement was probably something like positive visualization, and you hear this a lot in the sports field where people will practice and practice. So Roger Federer, when he gets up to serve for his whatever it is, Wimbledon championship at match point, he is able to do that pretty well automatically, even though his heart might be racing, because he's visualized this moment in time and can see it and feel it and knows where to hit the spot. And that as an NLP technique is really powerful. And how can you bring that into the world of business? So something like the worry parrot, this self-fulfilling prophecy of doom. I can't speak in public. I can't speak in public. I trip up and I make a mistake, and therefore, that demonstrates I can't speak in public. So, the technique of NLP in terms of transferring those negative thoughts to positive thoughts, and then giving yourself a positive narrative and a positive story, is a really powerful technique. Again,
have you got an example where you've used that for maybe speaking at an event or a meeting or a difficult conversation?
Well, anything that I would be doing, if it's a public presentation, speaking at a conference, I would be spending as much time mentally rehearsing and visualizing what I was going to do as I would do the text. Once I've got the text, it helps. So I'd also make sure that I don't have notes that I'm using. I will have the text in my head. I might have a few headlines, but I'm not going to stand and deliver 30 bullet point PowerPoint presentations, slides, or have pages and pages of notes. The story is in there, and the techniques in NLP will help with that. But the visualization of seeing, how am I looking, how am I sounding, how do I want people to kind of experience what I'm saying, visualizing people smiling at me, visualizing people applauding the presentation at the end of it, standing and waiting for that. So the focus is all about positivity, not about negativity and failure. This is how I can do something. So yes. I use that same technique whenever I'm preparing for something, but not to the, if it was a conversation or a difficult conversation, I think that was one of your other questions, I wouldn't be doing it in that way in terms of rehearsing the content, because the other power of NLP, in my interpretation, is encouraging you to be able to respond to what comes to you, rather than rehearsing what you think might be coming at you. And again, that taps into mindfulness, about being mindful in your listening, using the breath for pause, and being receptive and open with your heart in terms of what's being shared with you, and not having the conversation that you want to have. You actually have the conversation you need to have.
Excellent. So there's two ways of using that. And if I understand you, first, if you're sort of doing some sort of public speaking, ideally you want to know what you're going to say before you move into the visual rehearsal and positive frames of minds.
Yeah.
And then when you're speaking to somebody, and maybe it's a difficult conversation, is to be there, have this mindfulness where you're in the moment, you're responding to the person, but you also have the positive images of how you're reacting at the same time. Did I get that?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. I mean, going back to the first point you were making, often, people will say, I get anxious about speaking in public, and, how can you coach me to do it? If people don't spend enough time preparing, then there's not, no matter which technique I would be sharing with you from NLP, it ain't going to make a diddly squat of difference.
No.
You've got to know.
That preparation is the key. I have heard people quote anywhere for every 5 minutes of speaking, at least 2 hours of preparation.
Yeah. And, those who say I can just wing it generally will look as if they're winging it.
Yeah.
Those, one of the great phrases of, mindful practice is about effortless effort. And those who look as if they're, have got no effort being put into it will have spent a huge amount of time prepping and rehearsing. The greatest sports people, the greatest performers, the greatest artists, it all looks so effortless. When you see a gymnast on the floor, or working on the beam, it looks so easy, and yet it's so difficult. And the same applies in business as well. If you want something to be powerful, to be impactful, to have resonance, it takes a lot of effort to do it. There's no shortcut through it.
No, definitely not. And I think one of the things about meditation or mindfulness, which I believe are the same thing, is that you can have dynamic meditations where you're absolutely focused in on what you're doing, and that would be a meditation also. Is that correct?
Well, I think you could be in a meditative state, if that's kind of what you're trying to get at. That's certainly, where you're absolutely focused on what you're doing, and you might lose track of time. So, that's another example of being in the moment, being very focused, very kind of attuned to what's going on in your own world. Is that what you were meaning?
Yeah, I think so, because it sounds like a precursor to what's called the flow state.
Right, yeah. And it is very much that, where, sometimes it's not really great when you do it if you're driving in the car, but you go from A to B and suddenly you think, my God, I've arrived here already. What's been going on? And that is really where you're losing kind of, just that you're so much in the flow with what's happening that it becomes just kind of so intuitive.
Yes.
So it's a really interesting experience, and I'm sure everybody's had it from time to time in some regard. And you get that sometimes in your meditation practice, but not always. One of the challenges again with meditation or having a mindful practice is that sometimes you think this is really great, and then other times it can be really challenging, and such is life, and that's the way it is with your mind.
And I think that's the same with NLP as well, isn't it? Because as fabulous as it is, it does have its challenges.
Yes, as anything where you've got techniques which you're trying to apply, you'll have some days which are better than others. Nothing's ever going to be 100% all the time. And that doesn't mean to say it doesn't work. It just means that you've got to be slightly more aware of what's going on, and can you adjust your behavior, and can you adjust to your style? That's rather than always thinking this is the way I've got to do it, and I did it this way the last time, and thinking, but it hasn't quite worked, so what is it that I need to change or adjust? You've got the operating environment in which you're in, the frame of mind which you're in, the pressure that you're working under, all of which kind of impact you. So it's you've just got to be aware and alert to that.
Right. Fabulous. We've managed to cover such a huge amount of material in such a short period of time, from meditation, which is thousands of years old, to applying NLP within the business setting. Thank you for sharing your insights with us, Leatham.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the invite, and I hope people found it of interest.
And if somebody had a question for you or wanted to find out more about what you do, whether it's the apprenticeship or the mindfulness, how would they contact you?
Well, you can contact me through my website, which is www.themindfulhrcenter.com, or send me a message on LinkedIn, and I'll be more than happy to pick that up, or my email address, leithomg@hotmail.com, and I'll again be more than happy to get back with you in terms of any questions that you may have.
Excellent. And please do contact Leatham. He's wonderful, very generous in his knowledge, and he's taken the time to share with us today. Have a fabulous week as we build this NLP community and we share our expertise and our insights into having a very successful life. Till next time, see you soon.